Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast on the business model reinvention. The topic for today is how hardware as a service is turning CapEx into smart services and how it is unlocking growth for organization. Today, we'll explore how this shift is transforming the way organizations are acquiring, managing, and scaling their hardware equipment and devices through as a service models. Also, just to bring to this live, we'll talk about some real world use cases from two industry sectors industrial automation and medtech. I'm your host, Manish Gupta, partner at PwC. I help our clients in transforming to new business models. I'm thrilled to have our guest, Patrick Maroney. Patrick is a principal in SAP's high tech industry executive advisory group. Pat, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Manish. I'm really excited to be here and excited to share some perspectives on how this hardware as a service is sort of reshaping all of the industrial automation, high tech, healthcare, and even life science industries.
Awesome. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Pat. I know you and I we've been working together for for quite some time. So let's just kick things off. I was going through some of the recent market forecasts, and some of the number that I saw around hardware as a service was astonishing. I saw that the HaaS global market TAM was around $300 billion by 2028. And I think they are also showing some measurable impacts, such as reduced lifecycle cost, increased customer retention, and whatnot. And it feels like they are just not, projections. These are the proof points. So it feels like, cost is more than a buzzword. So let's start at the core. Can you just walk us through in terms of what hardware as a service really means and why we are seeing such a surge in momentum?
Yeah, absolutely. I think hardware as a service or HaaS. It's essentially a shift in business model from physically buying the items to not selling them, but delivering them as a service, right? So think about similar to like leasing a car versus buying a car outright. It's part of a much broader trend, right? Equipment as a service, device as a service. It's really an extension of software as a service. And instead of purchasing, for example, a whole robotic system or a diagnostic machine, you'd essentially subscribe to it like Netflix, right? You could pay for usage. You could pay a subscription on a regular monthly fee. You could link payments to outcomes being achieved. It could be a hybrid of all of these. What I really like about this, Manish, is that effectively the model reduces capital expenditure, right? It moves from CapEx to an OpEx, and it ensures constant access to the latest technology, right? You're not having to get all this capital to buy a refresh. It's on the provider of the equipment to if you're only paying for when you use the equipment, it's now on the provider of the equipment to ensure that the uptime of the machine is there, that you're got the latest features and functions. And so that permits the users of the equipment to like much more rapidly scale without being burdened by being out of date and out of time with hardware obsolescence. And as I mentioned, it could go hybrid, right? So, for example, you could look at, say, industrial robots. A manufacturer might deploy robotic arms, for example, under a monthly subscription plan. And that might include entitlements for maintenance, specific types of upgrades, even replacement parts. And maybe the overall machine might be on a total uptime payment plan where you're only paying for the amount of service. So, it can vary. In med tech, for example, hospitals can adopt high-end diagnostics on imaging equipment. So you think about MRI machines or CAT
Mhm.
scans, and that can be done on a service-based model. And so you can avoid all these massive upfront costs on buying the equipment, maintaining the equipment, installing the equipment, and it ensures that the most cutting edge technology is there. So I'm really excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think it is really fascinating in terms of how this will drive strategically in terms of the flexibility for the organization. So I think one question I'm sure that is on top of the CFO and CIOs is, given the economic situation we are in, how do I plan for this financially? Uh, so maybe, I think what I would like to do is I would like to just dive into some of the revenue models, and let's just talk about the flexibility that HaaS can provide. So can you just talk about those revenue or the financial models, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. And I alluded to them a second ago, right? So
Yep.
there are several different financial models that make hardware as a service attractive. So you could do subscription based pricing, and this is probably the most common, where there's a fixed fee paid per month. There could be pay per use works where it works really well in med tech, for example, where hospitals might only pay for each scan performed, or anywhere that you can help make costs more predictable, tie them directly to, say, volume, service volume. You could set it up as tiered pricing as well, right? This helps align costs with usage levels or service tiers. And I think one of the most exciting and probably the scariest is this outcome based models, right? And they're particularly relevant in healthcare where payments could be linked to diagnostic accuracy, to the turnaround time of the diagnostics itself. And then, as I alluded to earlier, there could be hybrids on. It doesn't just have to be everything. It could be some components or subscription, some paper, et cetera, et cetera. So you can blend these elements and drive much more long term stability, right? So I think the sky's the limit. And I think, what I've often seen too is when economic headwinds wind up a little turbulent, this new way of doing business models unlocks new opportunities for both the consumer as well as the producer for getting the equipment that people need but might not have the old way of financing or buying to be possible. So, to me, it's the financial models make this really exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Pat. And I think that's a great point. And but you and I, we both know, given that we have been in the industry for so long, that these business or the revenue models just doesn't differentiate for these companies anymore. And especially in the context of AI and data intelligence, what's going on. So, like, what do you think about the impact of AI? And then, given that you represent the product company SAP here, what SAP solutions will or can play in this space, especially the industry that we are talking about, the industrial product, high tech, healthcare, and medtech. Can you just double click on that one?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, AI is going to play a transformational role across all industry sectors, and especially the ones that we've already hit upon here, where hardware as a service is going to play. And I think, we talked a little bit about the financial models a second ago,
Yeah.
where customers are aligning costs with business performance, and it's helping providers with predictable recurring revenue. Um, but all of this also fosters a foundation for continuous optimization. And this is where AI comes in, layers on top of that, and plays a much more important role. So, for example, in industrial robotics, it's going to enable predictive maintenance. It's going to help identify wear and tear before the failure occurs. It could be a vibration, could be a temperature, anything that you've got sensors on, and it could even drive putting more types of sensors on equipment, and therefore even taking older equipment and making older equipment more usable as well. What does that do? We move from scheduled maintenance plans to actually and where that often drives unscheduled maintenance, which is the worst kind to have because it can take a whole factory line down when you didn't plan for it. So effectively, if you can start to sense when maintenance is needed, when there's an issue, you can actually reduce all of that unplanned downtime significantly, and that can have a direct effect on your bottom line. Giving yourself this whole thing as well gives you utilization insights. So this is going to help manufacturers actually optimize how the machines are used, and then that's going to drive improvements in efficiency and ROI. So we talked a lot a minute ago about the financial advantages to this,
Right.
but this puts a lot of advantages on just ensuring that equipment is used better and that the equipment's design becomes more efficient and effective. if we think about it on a med tech side, AI could perhaps analyze the scan data in real time and therefore also assist the user of the equipment in detecting anomalies. Think about providing a radiologist with suggestions and advice that makes a radiologist's job more accurate and maybe taking less time as well. This could also lead to noticing how to suggest or recommend different protocols and adjustments. So overall, diagnostic accuracy can improve. I think machine learning models are really exciting. I mean, we're not talking just chat GBT, I think is what everybody thinks of now when they
Yeah.
think of AI, but we're really talking about machine learning, really the old fashioned definition of AI with the mathematical models. And that's what's used to help forecast equipment, the predictive maintenance. But that can also then be used on the sales side, back in the providers of the equipment, to forecast demand, to help forecast supply chain availability as the demand shifts. And that can also be brought into play for the users of the equipment. So, for example, hospitals could use that type of forecasted information to plan staffing, to plan patient appointments better, right? So, in my humble opinion, AI is going to help the vendors tailor hardware configurations based on the performance requirements. It's going to make much more intelligent product recommendations in terms of that configuration, and it could be a single product or a bundle of products tied together. And then we can start to align these with specific use cases. So it's a win-win for both sides of the buy-sell equation.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. And if I may just add another view here, and especially since we are talking about hardware as a service, I think the agentic AI is another exciting aspect of AI innovation where we are going to see truly the operating efficiencies for the companies, and not only that, I think a better customer experience with agentic AI. So I think, as you said, the the future is unlimited and the possibilities are unlimited, and it's incredible to see the impact of AI that we are already seeing with some of our clients. And I know as we go through this conversation, we'll talk about some of those quantitative benefits. But this is amazing what's going on. But as you and I, we both know, none of these transformations are without hurdles. Even with the AI and the finance innovation that we have just talked about, adoption is something which is not going to happen automatically. So that means we both have to acknowledge the reality here. So, just in your view, just based on some of your customer interactions, what are some of the biggest challenges these companies are facing when they transition to HaaS?
So the promise is wonderful, but the reality is in the execution and how to make it happen, right? That's where the challenges lie. So what we just talked about a minute ago, smarter services, more proactive services, different types of intelligence. This elevates hardware as a service beyond just a convenience. But financially, this shifts the burden to the providers of the equipment, right? Especially
Right.
when equipment costs are high. And so you've got to be very exact with what customers are going to need and when. This is a significant in all these sectors that we've talked about, whether it's robots or MRI machines.
Hmm.
They're not cheap equipment, and so if you get the staging of all this wrong, that can be a very big financial mistake. On the customer side, there's often a mental block, if you will, right? If you've always done it this way, why change? Many hospitals, many manufacturers, they're used to owning their own assets outright. So shifting to a service model, I'm going to get my stamp press and my robot
Hmm.
by model of Netflix.
Sure.
This really requires a change in mindset. But there's nothing like a shift in economics and economic headwinds to drive a compelling event in the mind shift on both sides. I would say too that scaling this globally means that you're going to have to build a dependable network of service parts, right? If as a equipment provider, I only make money, I used to sell you equipment. I used to install the equipment. I used to maintain the equipment, maybe provide consumables. I used to have four lines of business. And now I'm going to collapse all that into just selling you a lease. And if the equipment's not up and running, I don't get paid. I've
Yeah.
effectively become a utility company, right? And
Mhm.
that's a major challenge. So, for scaling this and becoming that utility, I've got to make sure that the machine is up and running all the time. That falls on the provider of the equipment. So they're going to have a dependable network of service partners, ensuring that the uptime is there, that it's consistent. And if you start to get into rural clinics, um, where do you put the inventory? How much trunk stock inventory will you have, out there to do that? If it's a sprawling manufacturing facility, think about an automotive plant. Uh, you know, we start to get really smart, or we need to get really smart on the staging of that inventory and shared resources.
Got
For
it.
success, providers are going to need to offer seamless support. The SLAs are going to have to be absolutely transparent and probably adjustable. You're going to have to build trust as a provider to get that mindset to work. There's also going to be a lot of regulatory challenges. So, particularly in healthcare, where compliance or patient data security is paramount, because the other thing too is if the uptime all shifts to the provider of the equipment, we're really talking about an IoT type setting. I need to know, what is that piece of equipment doing in near real time in the field, and I need to be able to then go and maintain it. So in a hospital setting, I got to also have all those security protocols in place so those machines can't be hacked remotely. Overcoming these barriers, this is going to require end-to-end encryption. This is going to require extremely strong change management practices and governance. There's going to have to be clear communication of ROI and an establishment on what are the key performance indicators, the KPIs that we want to focus on. I would say a lot of phases to how it gets implemented are going to be required. And I'm going to say that this is going to drive a lot of pilot programs. Let's put our toes in the water and test this to see. Let me try it before I buy it, sort of thing. So I think this all
Mhm.
provides a lot of challenges.
Yeah, no, Pat, and definitely look, we at PwC uh, have been helping a lot of our clients, and I'll talk about this in a minute in terms of how we are driving the value outcomes and whatnot. But before we go there, I also just want to just touch upon another topic with you around the sustainability, right? As world is increasingly focusing on the ESG, what are your thoughts about how HaaS will contribute or contributing to these greener operations?
So I think that's an excellent subject, right? I think sustainability is a natural fit for HaaS. Well, why? In both
Mhm.
robotics and medtech, providers are essentially incentivized to extend the hardware life. So through refurbishment, through reusing different components. So I think you're going to see, instead of filling up landfills, you're going to see a lot of circular economy type stuff happening right there and then, for the reasons I just stated. Right, instead of discarding old systems, parts are going to be upgraded and recycled. This is also going to change how we design. I know there are still some industries and companies that are still struggling with design for manufacturability, and the shift is going to be to design for serviceability. But this is going to significantly reduce the amount of waste. For example, a refurbished CAT scanner. This can be deployed in a developing region. This could then extend the life cycle of the use of that one single piece of equipment. And this can simultaneously increase access to healthcare in other parts of the world. In manufacturing, old robotic arms can be reconfigured for less demanding tasks. They can be
Mhm.
stripped for reusable parts. So there's lots of examples. Providers are also going to have visibility into the usage data of the equipment, and that's going to enable their engineering to do a much better proactive job of design going forward. There's going to be a lot of resource allocation efficiencies that are driven from this as well. And as you start to see these efficiencies, there'll be other byproduct efficiencies like the reduction on energy consumption. So I think, if you're capturing the carbon usage and we were to track the carbon usage before an effort like this and after, you're going to see a significant gain. So I will add, let me add one more point if you don't mind, Manish.
Sure.
Uh, Furthermore to this, I would say as well that centralized ownership is going to lead to fewer idle assets. If I'm providing equipment and I'm only making money if that equipment is working, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that that equipment is being utilized. And so whether it's for you or somewhere else, right? So that's going to promote the circular mindset as well. So
Yeah.
companies that are looking to meet ESG goals, they're going to find that that HaaS allows them to innovate responsibly. It's going to help them reduce their carbon footprint, and at the same time, they're gonna get access to all the latest pieces of technology and cutting edge tools. So it's again, it's a win-win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I love where we are going with this conversation because I think we are really seeing the impact in clients, top line and bottom line, who are adopting these new business models.
I have a
Um,
question for you, if you don't mind.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've seen how this is played out on the ground, right? I'd be curious, based on your experience helping PwC clients implement HaaS models. What learnings,
Sure.
what highlights do you have?
Yeah, let me just talk about few things that we are seeing with our clients. I think if I just basically pick up more on the provider side to start this conversation, I think the companies who are succeeding in implementing these HaaS model, they have built a strong partnership within their internal teams amongst products, product offerings, planning, go to market, and finance, so that they know exactly how this value chain is going to work. Because look, as you adopt as a service model, as you talked about, the way you recognize revenue is very different than how you used to do with the physical products and whatnot. And I think one of the things that we have also seen with our clients who have been successful, they are the early adopters of these digital capabilities. Example like remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, IoT. And not only that, they're also starting to think about what that means when they start putting the usage based model or the subscription based model. And I think if I just really look at the three key value outcomes that these clients are driving, and I'll talk about both provider side as well as on the end customer side. One, if I look at the end customer, there's a cost reduction. I think customers who are adopting the HaaS model, they're often seeing a reduction in capital expenditure by up to 40%. So there's a huge benefit that they are reaping. Of course, it puts burden on the provider side of it because as they have to think about their cash flows and whatnot. But if I just come back to the end customer side of it, we are seeing improvement of their cash reserve by almost 25%. So if you look at the cost reduction, the cash flow improvement, and the last thing that I will talk about is the operational efficiencies. I think that has really helped these end customers in reducing their equipment downtime by almost 25 to 30%. That's huge because now you are moving away from time-based maintenance to the condition-based maintenance, and I think AI is starting to play a significant role in terms of what's happening. But I think if I just look on the softer side of it, the impact of this is you are basically having a you know much stickier customer base because now you have a predictable recurring revenue, you have a more consistent sales pipeline, and whatnot. But I think you already touched upon one thing is our guidance and what we have seen with the clients who have been successful. They are taking baby steps. They are not just basically saying, hey, let's just go and solve the world hunger. They're launching the target pilots with very clear KPIs and the outcomes, that they can measure, they can basically go back and basically excite the rest of the organization in terms of, hey, what does that mean? Because change management is huge in terms of these early wins and then whatnot. I think those are some of the things that we are seeing, Pat, and then I think this is exciting. And the last thing that I'll say is, in last 12 months, especially, we are starting to see clients looking really more and more about how do they integrate AI into these models, right? I know we have been talking for last few minutes about the adoption of AI, the impact of AI, and I think we are starting to see the impact. And as a part of the work that we are doing, the clients are asking us to come really help them define the AI strategy, integrate with these new business model, and eventually really drive the value outcomes. I think those are some of the things that we are seeing in terms of what's happening on the ground with number of our clients.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's in line with my thinking too. Some of that AI stuff, we didn't really talk about that in when we mentioned challenges, but as AI plays a more and more important role, effectively, data, the cleanliness
Yeah.
of the data, the access to the data plays a more and more important role. And the context of that data, a data that's just unstructured, where all the context of how it was collected, under what environment it was collected, if that's lost, that makes the AI role that much harder. And where people are taking baby steps, they're not always thinking about that side of the equation either, right? They might be in such a rush to get a baby step AI model out that instead of putting in a bike with training wheels, you're buying a tricycle. And I think what's important challenge is to make sure that you've got the long-term view in mind, especially on what you need for data as the foundation, even if the immediate near-term needs are baby steps and might be a little bit less. I just wanted to layer that in based on what you said.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Pat. So so let's just talk about the future, right? I think we are already seeing from hyper personalization to the autonomous operations, smart contracts, look, AI driven customer experience. The list is unlimited, right? And the possibilities are unlimited. So if I just look at next 3 to 5 years, and given that I touched upon the market possibility of like $300 billion, where do you see this HaaS market is evolving and going?
I read that white paper too. As one of the analysts, right? 300 billion is as I think
Yeah.
attractive in and of itself, and a motivator for people to take a deeper look. I think the future of HaaS is incredibly promising. So we're already starting to see hyper personalized service models where offerings are dynamically configured based on user behaviors, usage patterns, contextual data. In industrial robotics, this could mean robotic units that adapt their workflows in real time, depending on production needs. In med tech, it could be diagnostic machines could personalize scanning parameters based on the patient's history, based on their demographics, based on their physical references. So I think there's a lot we could talk about in terms of, we probably need a separate webcast just to talk about
Yeah.
what's possible in the future. But I think as AI starts, as the I in AI, as the intelligence becomes more and more intelligent, we're going to see autonomous operations, and it's going to take center stage, where hardware is going to be self-configurating, right? Self-calibrating, even initiating service requests automatically.
Yeah.
Smart contracts, right? They're going to ensure transparency. You're going to have automated enforcement of service terms. We're going to be able to reduce the amount of disputes. It's going to accelerate trust between all these parties. I love the win-win on both sides of this equation. Additionally, I think, AI-driven customer support, it's going to shift from reactive help desks to predictive help desks. We're going to see conversational assistants that
Mhm.
resolve issues before they even surface. So on the sales, on the customer experience front, AI is going to enable real time tailoring of offers. You're going to see a complete change in the way that CPQ processes work. There's going to be much more intelligent AI-based configurations in the product. It's going to directly connect the PLM engineering departments with their customer. And as you see the digitization of, of PLM, of customers across the supply chain, we're going to see digital threads take effect. And I just want to say that this is also putting more and more and more focus on using your technology and your technology partners strategically. So I think over the past 10 years or so, we've seen a shift to technology and technology vendors and partners being
Mhm.
sort of tactical, and they're going to be strategic enablers of this strategy. So I think I see a futuristic change there. But I'll just close by saying, you know, HaaS is going to become not just a delivery model. It's going to become an entire intelligent ecosystem. It's going to continuously learn on itself. It's going to adapt on its own, and it's going to help deliver value at a scale that we can only imagine at this point. So, to me, it's really exciting to see what companies like the one that I work for, SAP, what we're doing right
Yep.
here. I mean, we're talking about revenue recognition, invoicing, different billings, different types of entitlements that come with all this, entitlements to service, entitlements to different types of consumption models. It gets really, really complex. But what's more important is that when one part of your business sneezes, it could be a change in the way that customers are using entitlements. How does that affect the supply chain? Right? And if we start layering in AI and we start layering in AI agents that can now go across different lines of business, agents for agents, so to speak, or AI for AI,
Yep.
it's going to be really, really important that your technology and your technology partner isn't just isolated in one little piece of the data, but has connectivity across an entire suite of areas of your business. That service and engineering and supply chain and sourcing, it's all connected. So when change does happen in one in real time, the other part of your business is able to adjust and adapt to it. And this whole HaaS model
Mhm.
really begins to emphasize the need for real-time data. Add to that economic headwinds and fluctuations where I might have to, you know, adjust my overall supply chain plans, my business strategy more frequently. I'm going to be very dependent on information to advise me in making better decisions faster. I won't be able to afford in a HaaS model to learn that my strategy was wrong a month or a quarter later. I'm going to need to figure out if I've made a bad plan. I need to figure that out in days, weeks, at 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 the most. And so a real-time business is going to become absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I'm glad that you touched upon a couple of things as a part of your closing thoughts around the supply chain, right? Because lot of because especially with because of AI, a lot of this will become self-corrected supply chain, the smart supply chain, and I think the decision making, which has always been hard for the organizations, is something which is going to get improved with what's happening, not only by these service models but also with the technology which is basically supporting this thing. So, Pat, this is an awesome conversation, man. As you said, I think probably we need another session just to talk about AI and some other topics which we have not been able to cover in this podcast.
Yeah.
But really appreciate for an insightful conversation. I hope our listeners who are listening to this podcast have gotten some value from this, and then they will also get some action and excited about how they can go back and really think about enabling HaaS as or hardware as a service or HaaS. So thanks for your time and look forward for our another conversation, in the near future.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Manish. Thanks for having me here. It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely.